What's going on, viewers of the OG Dad Off the Record podcast? It's your host, the OG Dad himself, with a quick disclaimer slash update. So, unfortunately, this episode is only an audio only component due to my error, and there's probably a lesson to be learned about slowing down as a dad. So, unfortunately, I was unable to capture that video piece like I usually do, and I'm really bummed out about it. I decided to release the episode, like I usually do, just as an audio only experience. So I think I still will upload the full episode to YouTube. It'll just be audio only. And then, obviously wherever else you listen to the show. So, if you do enjoy the show because of the video, I do apologize. If not, then hey, it doesn't matter. I hope you enjoy the show and, tune in next time for the next episode. But in the meantime, you enjoy this current episode. You all take care. Peace.
Yes, yes, yes. Classic.
Hey folks, welcome back to the OG Dad Off the Record. I am your host, the OG Dad himself, bringing you another great episode. This week, it's just me. So here's the thing no one tells you about being a parent. Kids usually don't ask if they can help. They usually just show up and they start helping. Hey folks, welcome back to the OG Dad Off the Record podcast. I am your host, the OG Dad himself, and you have just tuned into another great episode. So listen here, it's just me, solo dolo. I hope I'm doing okay. I've been out for a little while. Everything's okay. Just being a full-time dad gets a little hectic sometimes, and hey, your time is no longer your time, and that's okay. But I'm glad you're with me. I'm glad you're still here. Glad you're still listening. Glad you're still watching. Hope everybody is doing great this past weekend. I actually just watched the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Outkast and Salt and Pepper, my two favorites, the White Stripes, and a bunch of others, a bunch of artists I don't listen to personally, but that's okay. It was still a great show anyway. But I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're alive. I hope you're still here. And I hope you're still rocking with me. So we're going to kick this thing off real strong this week. So, and the reason why this episode kind of took a little bit of time, because I really wanted to flesh it out and just kind of think about what I wanted to say and be very careful about how I said it, because, the subject matter is a little, I don't know, it can be a little dicey sometimes when you're kind of thinking about it. And so one of the things no one tells you when you become a parent and when your little one starts to become a walker and a mover and, all those things that come with being a little one, a little toddler, is that sometimes they're going to want to help. And sometimes they're going to want to help you right away. Let me kind of set the scene a little bit here. So this is a kind of typical afternoon of, my wife and my daughter and I just kind of, hanging out in the house and, probably getting dinner ready, probably, wrapping up with dinner. And, now, you really kind of go into action with, resetting the place. If you eat at the table, cool. If not, you eat, in front of the TV. Sometimes we do. That's also cool too. So what happens is that you're all eating dinner, you finish dinner, then you have to clean up. And sometimes your little one wants to help with that cleanup process, right? When that requires you to move certain items, lift certain things, and that little one goes for the thing or knocks something over or makes a mess trying to be helpful. Right? Because at the end of the day, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to be helpful. But initially, it's perceived as something different. It's perceived as something unintentional. They're unintentionally in the way, and you need them to step aside. Now, I've had to check myself on on a few times, to correct how I perceive things, because it's never malicious. My daughter is never trying to be in the way. She simply just wants to be helpful. She wants to spend time and she wants to engage. She really wants your attention. And those are one of the things that I think myself, I can't really speak for my wife. I'm sure she's in agreement. Those are one of the things that, I really had to like teach myself and give not only myself grace, but give my daughter grace, because at the end of the day, she's really just trying to be helpful. She has no ill intentions. She is, she is daddy's little helper. She is mommy's little helper. And, at the end of the day, she was, it was something that was completely out of her element, but she didn't know that. And, I'm going to continue to push her to, go to those levels of kind of uncomfortability. Sorry about that. My phone's going off. It's literally probably my daughter probably getting up from a nap. But I want to continue to push her and move her along with being uncomfortable in situations where she's trying to be helpful. And, I always check myself, and, I put my head down, because in that moment, it was a moment of just, not frustration, but like, you're just trying to clean it up. You're just trying to, put things back the way they were. And, it's in a flash, you have to, course correct, because at the end of the day, you're not upset at your daughter. You're not upset at your son. You're really just trying to like move things along. You're trying to move the evening along. You're just trying to get things corrected. And, what I, kind of find myself doing sometimes is stopping what I'm doing and, bringing her along to help me, then pick it up or clean it up, or, whatever we're doing. Just so now she knows this is the way we do it. And she's really good at and just putting things back in their place. She knows when it's cleanup time. She knows when it's bedtime. When she comes home from daycare, she's, running to the bathroom to go wash her hands. So when it comes to moments like that or lessons like that, you really have to, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but, I really have to like check myself, because it's not that deep, first and foremost. And secondly, she's just trying to be helpful. And I got to continue to remember that when she, accidentally, drops some cookies or, whatever it is on the floor, because, that's never the case. She never does anything like that on purpose, unless we're like having fun or something. Right. So, there's never any situations to where she's doing anything like that on purpose that requires me to discipline her, because it never becomes discipline. It's a moment. It's a flashed moment. And then I immediately check myself and correct myself, or my wife corrects me. And it's, I'm like super apologetic, and like it's never, I'm never upset. Right. And, she might run off and go run to mommy or something like that. And, I have to like, suck it up and, go crawl over there or go walk over there and give her a hug, because daddy's not upset. Daddy's never been upset. And, daddy will continue to push you to be yourself, because at the end of the day, I'm going to only encourage her to be herself. And she wants to be helpful. Hey, if she wants to be helpful, then let her be helpful. And, there's nothing wrong with, with learning something new. And, I think sometimes as parents, because we are so routine, we are so just kind of involved with, the things that surround our little ones, that we forget when they're able to do so, they're going to start moving and shaking when they want to. And we have to give them, that grace and that space to sometimes make a mistake, sometimes knock something over, sometimes jump from somewhere she shouldn't be jumping. Thankfully, she's not doing that. But just using that as an example, mistakes will be made, when it comes to this journey, this early journey, especially. And you just gotta forgive yourself. And, you can't hold any grudges when it comes to being in that place of frustration, right? I'm not frustrated. I'm just trying to move things along, and I need to, humble myself and I need to chill out because it's not that deep at the end of the day. At the end of the day, everything can be fixed and or repaired and or cleaned up and or wiped out. So it's really not that big of a deal. And I just really wanted to, kind of open up with that, just because, like I said, I was thinking about this one for a while, and it's kind of like this unspoken thing I think parents have, because you see it, when you go to places with parents and their kids and stuff like that, where they're literally just trying to like engage, be involved, and you see the parent just kind of like go into parent mode, and like they're ready to like discipline them in that moment, and sometimes it just doesn't require that. And earlier today, we were out having food, and it involved us like waiting for about 20 or 25 minutes, and in the back of my mind, I just know that oh man, my she's not gonna like that at all. It's like, she can't stay still, like she's gonna hate that. But it's one of those things to where she doesn't understand what's going on. She wants to go in a restaurant, and this is a place we go to all the time. So she didn't, she doesn't understand that sometimes you do have to wait when you're trying to get a table for food. So, and she's a sweetheart, she's a darling. There's nothing that in my eyes she can do wrong while at this age. So I'll continue to support her drive for figuring things out. Next, I wanted to kind of jump into just traveling with a little one. So like we have this event that we are going to in about a week, and it made me realize well, we're actually going to be having a friend babysit for a day while we attend this thing. And it made me realize we've traveled with her, we've gone places, but this is the first time we're like leaving her with somebody while we travel, like both of us, like we're both going to be doing a thing. And I guess she'll be close enough, but still it's just kind of like it's a lot of unknowns. And maybe I'll talk a little bit about it next week, just to let you all know how that went. But from the experience that we had earlier this year, we went to New Orleans, which is not a family friendly city. So anybody looking to take their family to New Orleans, I'm letting you know now, outside of a couple of activities, there's not a whole lot there for a family to do. Really cool, and just kind of the food's all right, and great energy, but not so much great for the little ones out there, just because a lot of the activities are, you're just kind of out on the street and you're just walking from place to place to getting drinks and getting food and stuff like that. And I think about the plane experience and just like the whole equation around that. And since she is under the age of 2, you don't really have to like book a plane ticket for her. She's a lap rider or whatever. So that was great. But then there's your significant other, then there's a little one with you, and they're a lap rider, which is great. But then just keeping them entertained for several hours, depending on how long the flight was. I think overall the flight was about 6 to 7 hours. So, kind of a full day for us. But man, I really think about, man, that was so hard. The flight there was hard. The flight back was even tougher. We actually had a delay. We had a delay in our flight. It got canceled. And then the weather was all over the place that day. So we didn't know what was going to happen with, flight arrangements and stuff like that. And we got this baby with us, and it was an eye-opening experience, to say the least. And we got through it. On our return flight home, we actually ended up we ended up getting a flight. We finally found a flight that was going back, and our seats ended up being the very last seats on that plane. So I've only sat in the actual back of the plane maybe 3 times in my whole life. And this last time was the last time I did that. So we had the very last 3 seats in the back, because nobody wanted to sit with the baby. And it was good up until she just completely kind of lost it. And, she's tired. She's, cranky, probably hungry. She had she had a diaper that needed to be changed. So like it was certainly one of the more challenging flights I've been on. But just traveling with the little one in general, I guess we've been to a few places now that I kind of think about it out loud, but like, nothing was quite like that experience on that plane. And it just really had me thinking about, all the flights and stuff that we could have taken and all the trips we could have taken when she was a smaller baby. It's because when she was a smaller baby, all she did was just, sleep, eat, and, you change your diaper a few times, but other than that, you didn't have too much to worry about. No, now it's kind of a different situation with her being, so mobile, and she wants to explore and all these things, and you kind of have to explain to her like what's going on, and like you want to encourage her and let her do all of those fun things, but you also got to let her know, like, hey, we can't move right now because X, Y, and Z. Thankfully, we were in a 3-person seat, so there was a little bit of room for us, but there wasn't that much more room to roam. So, again, it's her wanting to figure things out, because she's grabbing things, she's dropping things, and again, that moment of just kind of frustration. You're just like, just let me do it, and but again, you totally, I encourage her. I will continue to do so long as I'm her dad. And it's literally her just saying, hey daddy, spend time with me. Hey daddy, I want to be important to you. So, those are the things that kind of, she can't say that out loud verbally, but that is what she means when she's trying to get your attention and say, hey, look, I did that, I helped. She's saying, I want to help you. That's what she's saying. And I think to some degree you actually do feel it. You feel it. You feel that she's trying to be helpful and she's trying to do the thing you're doing, because that's how your little one learns, by watching you and your behaviors and what you say and what you do. So we have to really, what I really have to do is watch my language around her, which I'm better-ish at it than I have been. But and I always kind of come back to this this thought of what would it be like when she becomes this person who won't need you to do any of those things for her, who won't ask you to help her with anything, because when it's all said and done, one day she won't ask. She'll be older, she'll be busier, she'll be hanging with her friends, we'll be the ones asking for that time, from her. And the house might be cleaner, but it'll also be quieter. And I don't, I think we all just kind of enjoy those moments of quiet time. We can get it when we can get it, but I can't imagine it being so quiet. I have to pick up my phone and call my daughter and be like, hey, what are you up to? You want to hang out? Or leave a voicemail. Like I can't even imagine, what I can't even imagine what that's like for parents nowadays. I try to make it a point to pick up the phone and call my parents and, see how they're doing and see what's going on in their world. So I can't imagine, just like holding my breath, like waiting for that moment. It makes me really anxious when I think about it and when I talk about it right now. I leave you all with this, and this is gonna be a little bit of a shorter one. Make the decision to slow down. Not all the time, because, we're human and, we have things going on, but more often. Slow down more often. Now she's in charge of, she can put the, napkins on the table if she wants to, or if we don't use our dishwasher, but hey, showing her how we wash dishes and how we prepare, meals and stuff like that. Putting the spoons away, definitely not the knives, and then just watching her just light up and learn from, just those day-to-day automatic activities that we kind of do and take for granted. At the end of the day, when those activities are happening, she's proud. She feels like she's capable. She's, that's her right there. She might be a little cranky. That's okay. That's okay, mama. You're entitled to be cranky. She feels capable. She feels seen. And I think at the end of the day, we all want to feel seen and we all want to fit in, and we have to give our little ones the autonomy and the allowance to do that. I think it's really important that they also, just kind of, steer their own ship. And I think my wife and I, we do a really good job at, asking her a lot of things before we do them, or we kind of show her what we're about to do and she goes, yeah, let's do it. So, the lesson here being, kids don't need us to do everything perfectly, but they just need us to slow down and, let them try. Let's be honest here. Some days I don't feel like slowing down. I kind of just want to, get through the day pretty quickly. Probably because I'm just exhausted or just tired, or, whatever I got, whatever baggage I have going on and I need to unpack. And, I think that's all right. We're parents, we're not superheroes. Nothing's perfect here. But, when we do slow down, when we choose to be patient and, we have to let them try. I think that's important to, give that little one that space to try certain things and, push their boundaries. We want to build that confidence, and, we're not just, choosing to do chores. We're teaching them that this is about patience. This is about, learning a new skill. It's all those things that kind of come into it. So, we're talking in independence and responsibility, teamwork, self-worth, all those things that, seemingly, we just kind of take for granted as adults. They are learning these things for the very first time, and it's okay if they stumble or they need some assistance or they don't know how to do it. And I think is okay. So if you're a parent that's just kind of dealing with the spilled juice or the broken eggs and, helping that looks like, sabotage, just know that you are not the only one that's out there, kind of feeling that way. And, where you're not going through it alone. We're all out here pretending we're okay with glitter glue on the furniture, even though we're not. But hey, you know what? Again, not on purpose. They're not out to sabotage your $1,000 couch. They don't know what money is. It's really not, it's not a big deal. But, but when they say, daddy or mommy, let me help, they're really saying, daddy, slow down, be with me. Let's do this together. So I think, those are some important things to kind of reflect and think on, as you're doing your parenting thing. So, take a breath, let them stir, let them fold, let them press those buttons, say thank you louder than not like that. Fast is convenient, slow is love, and I just want to go ahead and wrap things up here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of OG Dad Off the Record. I am your host, the OG Dad himself. Please share this with a parent who is currently sweeping up a helpful disaster. And I hope you all have a fantastic week, fantastic day, night, or whenever you are streaming or listening to this episode. You all have a great one. Take care. I'm out of here. Peace.